Turn off your lights. Make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. Silent Night by 242. Santa Claus is coming to town. You better be good. He's watching while you're sleeping, knows when you're awake. I always thought that song was a creepy one. Then you had his elves invading our homes to spy on us. It became more and more scary during that time to be bad. And after last year, I never want to be on his naughty list again. Being 15 years old, I was past the whole Santa phase. My little brother was still 6 and totally believed, so he still got the gifts under the tree. The first year I didn't get gifts from Santa, he noticed, and I just told him little boys and girls got gifts from him. I was just too old now. He can get my share though. But this year, I had been no good. I had been fighting with my parents over a boy I liked. He was no good for me, you know the story. I, of course, thought they were wrong. I had been sneaking out of the house to see him and was grounded just before Christmas. Seeing my room like I had been doing for a week was getting boring. It was Christmas Eve and I knew no one really would be out. I opened my window and slipped onto the roof, dangling myself off it before dropping to the ground. I had my house key to get in the front later, since the ladder I had been using to get back in was now chained up in the garage, in hopes I'd stop. The snow was thick on the ground as I started to walk through it, holding my coat around myself tightly. It had been more of a mild winter, still cold but not as bad as normal. I headed down the empty, silent street, walking to the gas station nearby. The neighborhood had many houses, but there were still a lot of forest since they were still developing it. As I walked through the snow, I pulled out my phone to help me find my way, deciding to cut through a shortcut in a small woods that would get me to the station faster. I swore I could hear bells in the distance, just behind me. I looked back and saw nothing, no lights, no person, nothing to make a noise. I thought to myself the snow must be echoing things oddly. The second I stepped into the woods, though, everything felt different. I could feel pressure in my ears. The sound around me disappeared. Each step I took, nothing. No crunch of the snow. With the moon out, I could see the trees moving in the wind, but there was no crackling of wood or rustling of pine needles. I decided to turn back to escape this oddity, but when I turned around, there stood a man in a red suit. He had a list in his hand, looking at me and then at the list. When he turned it around, I saw my name written on it with Naughty next to it. The list just disappeared in his hand, and that's when he pulled something out of the sack next to him. I could see in it. There were presents, but also blood, arms, and legs. The gifts seemed untouched by the gore I saw. That's when I saw the blood-covered axe. I tried to let out a scream, but though I knew I was screaming, no sound filled the air. He smiled, his cruel, bloody smile. I turned around and took off down the snow-covered trail. My heart was racing. I could feel it in my chest and I could hear it in my ears, the only thing I could hear. The axe came down, inches from me, hitting a tree next to me. I let out another silent scream as I tried to run harder, the snow making each step more difficult. Though others used the shortcut, it had just snowed a few hours before, each step more tiring than the last. I felt a sharp pain in my arm as he hit me, but just grazed it. I swore I could hear him laughing, a joy laugh. I dare not look back, my phone and its flashlight still in my hand, me trying my best to use it to see before me. I felt another sting as it got me in the back, another small gaze, cutting open my coat and shirt. I could feel my arm and back getting hot from the cuts he was causing me. I don't know how I got out of those woods, but I did, right next to the gas station I had been trying to get to. I kept running. I could hear my footsteps and the snow crunching under my feet once more. I let myself look back then and saw Santa Claus holding his blood-covered axe with a smile. He winked at me, and I could hear bells as he disappeared in a gust of snow. I called my parents, waking them up so they could get me. I had more cuts on my coat than I realized, and the one on my back was deeper than I first thought. I had to get stitches for it. When I got home, I found a note on my bed addressed to me with very fine handwriting. It read, "Naughty, naughty Sarah. I decide you should get another chance to be on the nice list. If you're on the naughty list again, I will have to finish what we started tonight. Santa." The letter had a piece of my coat in it with a bit of blood. I tried to scream in horror, but no sound came out. That's when I noticed the elf sitting on my dresser, watching me. I have been good this year, done everything my parents have asked, but if I dare to speak of that night, nothing comes out, and I always see that elf somewhere in the room. I've been watched closely this whole year, and I hope I did enough to get on the nice list. Oh God, I hear bells. I hear bells. The man pleaded with the child to stop, begging her not to make him go through the agony of death and reincarnation again. She simply removed his mouth before holding him closer to the fire, enjoying the pain in his eyes of coal while he melted for the 10th time, and her friends prepared another body to transfer the hat to next. It Came Home for Christmas by dlschindler. Darkness prevailed in our community. No lights, no music. It was as though the world would not have a Christmas. Ours was the brightest, the place for carolers and the inspiration for everyone's festivities. Not anymore. My husband had always gone all out for Christmas, put up the most lights, inflatable snowman, an arbor of candy canes with a life-size Santa on our roof. We even had a native scene, although we were atheists. We just loved Christmas, and it was always the time when our family was at its best. Year after year, after our son had grown, he had brought his family home for Christmas. They'd always made a card together, a handmade Christmas card in a gold envelope. Each was a treasure to me. I loved the drawings from the kids and the handwritten greetings from my daughter-in-law and my son. They wouldn't be coming home this year, not after the horrific accident. The temperature had plummeted suddenly after nightfall, and the light rain from earlier had made conditions just a bit icy. Sometimes a little danger is more dangerous than a lot of danger. I wasn't sure anymore. The pain was too great. In the morning, I wouldn't get out of bed because I was holding on to the dream of my son and his family. I wanted to live in the dreams, forget the world. I couldn't speak or take care of my home. I just wasn't able to move on. My husband had kept working, and it angered me that he seemed to be handling it. I knew he was hurt by the loss, but he seemed to have healed and continued with his life. I was never going to heal. For me, life felt like a punishment, like I had somehow done something wrong and deserved the agony of losing him. The next year at Christmas, it only got worse. No one put up lights. The community we lived in had followed us into the holidays, and we had stopped celebrating. They still had their Christmas parties, but we weren't expected to come, and nobody decorated. Part of me felt that too, but I asked myself if I wanted something different. Although I would have accepted it, I wasn't going to ask for it. "I'm going to put up the tree and leave the gifts under it," my husband told me. I just nodded and said nothing. There was a part of me, a little girl who had believed in Santa, that thought their ghost might come at midnight and have Christmas one last time. I fell asleep watching a Christmas movie when they said that anyone can make a wish and it will come true on Christmas. I wanted to believe in that. I wanted to believe that I could wish it all away. Then my eyes opened up and I beheld them gathered, just as I wanted. I should have left it alone, should have accepted the visit and began to heal. But I wanted more. I couldn't accept that that was the last time I would see them. I wish my story was about how I had spent those sleepy moments on Christmas Eve with them, enjoying their ghostly visit and then saying goodbye. It's what I should have done. It would have ended the tragedy and allowed me to heal and move on. I simply couldn't let go, and they even told me to let them go. But I couldn't. I love them too much, and the pain was too great. A dark quest began, searching for a way to bring them back. If they could come back to me once, they could come again. I did my research, my energy slowly coming back. After almost a whole year of searching, I found out about a relic that could grant one wish. Occultists online agreed that it was real, and all of them also stated they would never touch the thing, for it would grant a wish, but only at a terrible price. I became a believer in the Lazarus touch, a mummified hand that had reputedly already raised the dead on many occasions for thousands of years. I left the house and drove to the city, finding the bookstore that had last held the object of my obsession. "I'm looking for the relic you sold," I told the owner of the bookstore. "You advertised it a few years ago. Who'd you sell it to?" I asked. "What are you talking about?" he asked. "This," I showed him a printed out screenshot of the dried up hand. "You called it the genuine Lazarus touch. Here's the final bid. You sold it." "I'm not going to tell you who I sold it to," he smirked. "Then tell me, is it real?" "It's real. I never used it, but it came from a Peabody estate. Do some research and find out what happened there. You tell me if it's real or not." I felt a chill, some instinct warning me to stop and let it go. I should have listened to my instincts. I pushed past the mild trepidation and said, "You seem like a man who will make a bargain. I'd do anything to know where it is." He smiled evilly, and I was right about him. He was willing to make a bargain with me. I only had to sell my soul, it seemed. But I felt driven and alone, and I wouldn't let anything stop me. With the secret of the relic's location in my hand, I left him there, wondering if I had paid too much. I made myself forget about the bookstore owner and focus on my quest. I took his advice and researched the Peabody estate, hoping I could learn something new. What I read shocked and horrified me. I should have stopped myself. I should have turned back. I felt the first pangs of fear and regret, seeing the rumors of what had happened. I knew they were true. Something about the man's reference to it had convinced me he knew it was true, and I could feel it. There was an evil presence already watching me. The decision to drive halfway across the land to get the relics seemed irreversible, even before I left. I had paid a heavy price for the information, and I wasn't going to back down without at least seeing it, to know I could possess it and make a wish. One wish that would come true. When I arrived at the home of the relic's new owner, I sat outside in my car. I felt nervous, unsure how to proceed. The malevolent presence that had been haunting me seemed to be feeding on me, and I felt afraid of it, afraid to let it in. If I had just turned back, I could let it go, but I thought about Christmas Eve a year before. I remember seeing them, smiling and with me, ghostly but intact. My fears were overwhelmed by my desire. When the lights in the house were out and I felt like everyone was asleep, I crept up. I found the back door unlocked and I entered. I'd never done anything like that before, but I was desperate. There was no way they would sell it to me, not when they had paid more money for it than my house was worth. I had no choice but to steal it. I was shaking with fear when I found it. My instincts were telling me to stop and go back, to leave it secure under the glass they had it under. As I stared at it, I knew its power. I knew it was real. It occurred to me that I did not have to steal it. All I had to do was hold it and make my wish. Lifting glass felt like a bad idea. Not because I could get caught, because I knew it would exact a terrible price. I was afraid, knowing the danger I was in. But I did not care. I had to see my son again, no matter what. I wish my son would come home for Christmas, I said. I felt its power. I knew my wish was granted. Dizzy, I dropped it and staggered and fell over. The noise I made alerted them of my intrusion. I clambered to my feet, my heart racing, and fled. As I sped away, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw the old man who owned it. He had come outside and was watching me drive away. The look on his face was of great concern rather than anger or fear at burglary. He looked like he was afraid for me, not of me. At home, I couldn't relax. My heart was still racing. Would he call the cops? Would they find me somehow? Those material fears presided. I tried everything to relax. I made myself some tea, took a hot shower, watched infomercials, and pretended I would buy something. I fell asleep on the couch, and my husband found me there in the morning. "Where did you go?" he asked. I wondered if he could somehow sense things I had done. He was looking at me like he knew my sins. I just shrugged. "I went out," I said. "I'm home now. I just need to go do some things." He eyed me with suspicion. I felt guilty. I went to him while he was quietly making some coffee and kissed him and loved him. He forgot his suspicions, leaving for work feeling happy, thinking his marriage was going well. It was the least I could do for him. Christmas Eve was just a day away. Years had gone by and a few of our neighbors were hanging their lights. I walked around the neighborhood, greeting them and encouraging them. I knew my son was coming home for Christmas. On the night before Christmas, I sat awake, waiting for his arrival. My husband came downstairs and found me there and finally asked, "All right, what is going on?" Sounding worried, like he thought I had lost my mind. "He's coming home for Christmas. He'll be here soon. He's on his way," I said. "Who?" "Our son. He's on his way right now." "From his grave," my husband nodded. "I dreamed he was walking here from his grave, and now you are sitting there telling me it's happening." He looked pale. Coldness washed over me, a deep feeling of horrified dread at the fruit of my efforts. He was right. Our son was walking through the night from his grave. I felt sick. I felt terrified. I thought of the smiling visits that I had last year and had lingered, and then said goodbye. What had I done? "What have you done?" he asked me, a look of unrecognition on his face. I don't know," I claimed. I knew what I had done, but it was too late. We both just stared in horror as the clock chimed midnight. Just then, there was a singular thump on the front step of our front porch. We both slowly turned and looked at the front door, our eyes widening in realization and horror. What was out there was not our son, although it was him, dead for 3 years. There was another thump, something shuffling slowly with difficulty up the steps. My God. My husband was backing away. He's here. No, I whimpered in fright. This isn't what I meant. There was a final thump as the last step was taken by the shuffling corpse. Then I began to walk from the steps across the porch to the front door. I wasn't breathing, sweat beading on my face as I was holding up the couch's blanket, covering my mouth. My husband fled upstairs, unable to bear the horror of his son's remains knocking upon the door. Each knock on the door sent chills down my spine. I was frozen in terror, unable to respond. I just sat there shaking. It seemed to go on and on forever. I felt like I was in hell, being punished for my sins. I never believed in such things, but I no longer had that luxury. I knew what it was like to feel that torment and terror without end. Finally, after the longest and most horrifying night of my life, the sun began to rise. The knocking ceased, and the corpse reversed its steps, descending the stairs and leaving me to wail in anguish and trauma. When I had wept and shaken, I forced myself up to go to that door. With nauseating trepidation, I unlocked it and began to open it slowly. There was a coldness outside and a stench of moldy old rot. There on the porch, I saw grave dirt and dried maggot casings, the moldy footprints of the corpse showing its path through the night. I looked down and saw what he had left me. A little dirt was smudged on a golden envelope. I fell to my knees and picked it up. I held it to my heart, and somehow, as I stared out at the Christmas sunrise, I was finally able to say goodbye. The only guilt the woman had was that she was going to leave her son in a world full of monsters like those who were filming her. "Jump," her son commented on the grainy live stream of the woman standing on the guardrail of a bridge. And with that, our time together is coming to an end. First of all, I'd like to thank the writers who let me read the stories this evening. I really enjoyed It Came for Christmas. It was a great little story, definitely reminded me of the monkey's paw. I'm assuming there's a myth I'm missing for the Lazarus touch. Truth be told, it's a little hard to look up on Google, and some things I don't have those fun facts for. This apparently is one of them. But it definitely gave me monkey paw feels, where you make that wish, it comes true, but it always turns on you. So yes, her loving son came for Christmas, wearing his funeral garbs and maybe a worm sticking out of his eye hole. You know, that corpse has been in the ground for a bit. Who knows what's really left of it? And, well, of course I enjoyed Silent Night. That was one that I wrote myself. I did have another story lined up, but when I went to narrate it, I realized I had narrated it the year before. So, I decided it was time to write a story and give you guys a little spooky 242 tale. I definitely channeled thoughts that I had been thinking for many years, like, Santa's Coming to Town is such a creepy song. He knows when you're awake, he knows when you're sleeping, he knows if you're being good or bad. And now, this new trend of having the elf on a shelf to watch you and report back to Santa every night. It all just really made for a great idea for a creepy story, and why Santa is watching your every moment. He just wants to have some fun, and the naughty ones are the funnest to chase. And of course, if you have a story you'd like me to narrate, you can send it to me 3 different ways, either through an email, my website, or my subreddit. All the links are down below for easy access. If you enjoy these stories, hit that like button and make sure it feels it. If you're new, please subscribe and turn that pretty little bell to all notifications. And of course, I would love a comment. Tell me what you thought, what kind of stories you like in the future, anything like that. If you're listening on the podcast and are able to, please leave a review. And of course, if you're on Spotify, you are now able to write comments as well. If you'd like to help these stories reach new people, share this with anyone who might enjoy it. It helps quite a bit. If you'd like to help in a more financial way, like these lovely people on screen right now, I do have Patreon and memberships, where for $1 a month, you get early access and a few other bonuses as well. If you'd like to do a more one-time thing, I do have PayPal, Buy Me Coffee, and Super Thanks on YouTube. As always, guys, none of this will ever be expected, but always appreciated. Just having you guys watch and listen will always mean the world to me. I truly enjoy narrating, and I do enjoy writing too. It's hard to come up with a really cool story idea sometimes. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.